Hi, this is Mark from ITC Solutions, and today I just want to talk about the how Fortilink and the Fortigate firewalls manages their local Fortis switches, and also how if you're in a current Cisco environment, what the easiest way is to migrate into your into Fortiswitches. I've had a lot of questions. I can tell people are kind of confused on both how the Fortigate firewall functions with Fortiswitch over the Fortilink. And also there's been a lot of confusion in what a easy way is to migrate their existing non-Fortigate switches easily so they can swap them out with Fortiswitches if they already have a Fortigate firewall. So I just want to go over that today. So first of all, I just want to explain how a Fortilink interface actually works with the Fortiswitch. A lot of people are a little confused how this works, so I just want to point out that basically that this configuration is in the old days what we'd call a router on a stick. When you create anything in this configuration, the Fortiswitch is acting just as a standard layer 2 switch, and all the IPs and interfaces are being created up on the Fortigate firewall itself. And we're going to go over how to look at this real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to connect a Fortigate 124E switch to my Fortigate 60F firewall. And then I'm also going to plug in my Cisco. I have an old Cisco 2950 layer 2 device, which I'm going to plug into this Fortiswitch I'm going to manage. That's just to show you how you can easily migrate. So let's go over to the Fortigate itself, because that's where everything is done. Because remember, this Fortigate is going to be used to manage the Fortiswitch. And by default, with the Fortilink, with most of the lower level firewalls, they'll have A and B as your designated Fortilink interfaces. On the switches themselves, port 24 is almost always designated. A lot of times every port is designated so that it can connect back to a Fortilink. But if you stay on port 24, you should be safe. And if you want to use a different port, say on the firewall or on the switch for that matter, you can turn the port, change the ports if they're not set up for this interface. For example, on the firewall, you just go to another, you'd have to go to another interface, because in this case, they're already all assigned to internal 5, or I mean, to the internal VLAN switch. And so if you double click on that, I can remove one. I'm not going to use one in this video, so I can just remove one like so. And I can turn around. It's taking a little while. I'm just going to refresh the screen here. I can take one out and I can add it to the Fortilink interface. And so I can come up here and literally just go up here and add that interface I freed up. And it now too, if let's say I had 3 Fortiswitches or whatever, I could add them. Okay. So you can see nothing currently is plugged in. That's why they're all red. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in a Fortiswitch. And remember, the Fortiswitch, this is a special trunk that it's basically an 8021Q trunk, but it has a bunch of management information and additional management VLANs on the Fortilink. And I have tried connecting it to other vendors like Cisco Switches. And in my experience, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I would try to steer away from that. Even though it's an 8021Q trunk, it does not seem to be compatible necessarily with other vendors. And so right now I just plugged in a Fortiswitch, and the Fortiswitch I plugged in, I had factory reset it. And when you want to do that, that's the way it will easily find it. And so once you plug it in, you just go down to your Wi-Fi switch and controller, and you can go look at your managed Fortiswitches, and you'll see that since I don't have authorization set by default, which you can, it will show up as status unauthorized. So you have to come in here and hit the authorize button. And once you do that, it will start sending data across that link. It will, because it's just a layer 2 switch and the Fortilink is actually providing all the IP addresses, what it's doing is it's pushing down any of those special VLANs. This is reconfiguring it that. It's also pushing down a DHCP address. And you'll see that if you come back up to your network. Here, you'll push down. If you go to your Fortilink, it will push down something, an IP in this range. So maybe it'll get something like 10.255, 1.3 or something. We could check in the CLI to see what it actually gets, but it's going to pull down one of those management IPs, and then the gateway will be on the Fortiswitch itself. And I think there's been some confusion with a lot of my clients, because when you configure this, you go to Wi-Fi switch controller, and the first thing we're going to do is configure the VLANs. And if we go back to our drawing, I think we're just going to do VLAN 11 and 12, because we're going to run VLAN 11 and 12 all the way through this system. Now there's already special Fortilink ports. There's a Fortilink ports that already actually set up for voice, for example, if you wanted to use those. In my case, especially because I'm going to be using another vendor switch, I want to create my own. You don't have to, but most likely you already would have had voice and data VLAN set up in your network, so it just makes sense to stick with those. So we're going to start with just 11 and 12 as our voice and data. So we're going to go back here, and the first thing we're going to do is just create our Fortiswitch VLANs. And you can see we have these special management VLANs, and then we have segmented VLANs, for example, which if you look at some of those, notice you have voice, video. These are kind of special segments. If you wanted to, you could use, if you don't want to use the standard VLANs that are already on your network. I do, so I'm just going to create 2 new ones. And I'm going to just call one of them here. We'll start with we'll start with data. You notice the higher level of VLAN. Whoops. And we're going to do 12 on this guy. And for the IP mask here, we want this to be the gateway for our network here. So we're going to make him .1. If I can get rid of the menu, make it .1. Whoops. A little crazy there. So we'll make it .1. And we also, I don't want to manage anything over this because it's just going to be a regular user VLAN, but I do want to be able to ping. Okay. So we're going to turn that one up. And then I'm going to create a VoIP VLAN here as well. So I'm just going to call it VoIP. You could call it voice or whatever you want, so you understand what VLAN it is. And that was 11 on our drawing. And I'm going to do same thing. I'm going to make it the fault IP for my voice network for what the phones would go to if I had phones. And you do the same thing if you had video or whatever you want to do. If you don't want to use the VLANs that Fortinet has configured or in the arrangement that they're using. So I'm just, again, I'm just going to hit ping and hit OK. Now, notice I'm doing all this down here, and I think what causes confusion is I think some of my clients think that this is all happening on the actual Fortiswitch itself. Like they think it's a layer 3 switch, and so this causes confusion when they're trying to configure the next switch over. if they have more than one Fortiswitch, they assume they have to get another VLAN with an IP address because it's on the switches, but it's not on the switches. It's a router on a stick configuration. And you can see that because if you come up to network and interfaces, you'll see that all of those VLANs I just created, interfaces, were actually created right here. And you can see they're actually on the firewall, 10.15.11.1, and the data, 10.15.12.1 is right here. And you'll also notice that the rest of these are in those DHP, the 10.255 range, those special management IPs that were set up earlier. So that's all that's going on when you do this. It's really a router on the stick. It works kind of like a lot of if you're managing like an HPE or something over the internet through the port, it's kind of similar. The port pushes down an IP to your device to configure it, and you end up with a dedicated management port. So my port now, if you look at it here on our device here, this Fortilink is basically my dedicated management trunk port or tag port, depending on which nomenclature, whether you're talking like Cisco world or standard switch world. It's that standard port, and it's just the way it's going to work. It also has special settings, like if you want to have for redundancy, when you go look at your Fortilink interfaces, not only do you have stuff like Fortilink split interface. If you have that enabled, for example, and you have two Fortiswitches plugged in, it's going to shut down one of the interfaces, because what that's doing is it's treating it like a hot standby. If you don't want to do that, you're going to want to disable split interface and depend on something else for your managing your redundancy. So, but that's basically all Fortilink is when it comes to managing the Fortinet. Now we're not done. I just wanted to point out how it actually works. That it's a router on stick formation. But what we haven't done is all we've done is created these VLANs and basically the interfaces up here on the Fortigate and the VLANs in the VLAN database on the Fortiswitch. We have not assigned the interfaces yet, like you would on a, say, with the switch port command on a Cisco router. So to do that, we can do all of this from the Fortigate firewall because it's controlling the switch. And so all you have to do is come over to your Wi-Fi switch and controller, and you can just go down to your Fortiswitch ports. Okay. And you can, what you should do normally, let's say, I have a couple computers plugged in, as you can see, but what you should do is, let's say we pick here, I'm just going to pick a certain number of, hit my shift key and just kind of select a certain number of ports. But if I was going to do, like normally you'd probably do all the ports, but I'm just going to do 5 of them. So what you would do for your native VLAN, because your native VLAN, just like in Cisco or anyone else, is that is the VLAN where if an untagged packet comes to your port, this is telling it, where do I want to place this VLAN? So this is going to be for if a computer, of course, is most likely going to send untagged traffic. So in my case, I would want my data VLAN to be my native VLAN, because that's where my computers are going to live on, VLAN 12. So I want the traffic that comes in untagged to be sent to VLAN 12, just like an access point port on a Cisco switch. And just like, kind of like a Cisco switch, if I also come over here, this is basically like, oops, do that. Let's get out of this real quick. This is like just setting up, if you're doing your trunk allowed, whatever VLANs you want to allow through your trunk, right? In fact, it's called allowed VLANs. You could add your, you can do multiple here. You don't have to just do one. So it's not exactly like a pseudo trunk on a Cisco device where you have an access on a voice port, or even possibly, I guess on a hybrid port you can add on other vendors. But so it's more like a hybrid port on other vendors, but in the way I'm using it here, it's going to work just like the pseudo trunk on Cisco. So what I'm saying is, hey, my tag traffic coming in from my phone, right? Just allow it to come through and send it up the trunk. Okay. And then allow it to go out as well. So just by doing what we just did here, we're strictly configuring the switch this time because we're looking at the switch interfaces. So what I've done, and we created the VLANs, if we go back to the drawing, is now we've configured these VLAN 11 and 12 on the Fortiswitch. Okay, the thing is, I have these set, this VLAN 12 looking for untagged traffic, but because I also want to go over quickly, if you have a different vendor, HP or Cisco, a lot of people, for some reason, think they have to plug it back into the firewall. And I must admit, in the past, I've been able to plug in Cisco's or HP's right to the Fortilink interface. And since it was an 021Q trunk, I could send data up to it. That doesn't work. It doesn't work on the one I'm currently using, and it doesn't always work, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend ever trying that. But in the past, that's actually worked for me. So what the standard procedure I would do is I would plug my old switches, Cisco, HP, whatever you're trying to do, through the Fortiswitch, would set up a trunk on both sides or a tagged link on both sides. So on the Cisco switch right now, I have it set up as a mode trunk. And on the Fortiswitch, I'm going to go in and basically just configure something to accept tagged traffic from the Cisco, effectively a Cisco trunk. Okay. So we're going to go back to our ports, and we're just going to pick a port. And I'm just going to pick, let's just do, doesn't really matter here. Let's just do port 8. And I'm going to go in, and I actually don't want to do native, right? We don't care about the native VLAN. What we care about is it accepting VLAN 12 and VLAN 11 when they're tagged over an interface. Okay, so I'm going to select both those. I don't really care a whole lot about in fact, I should probably take out, I don't need these quarantine Fortilinks and stuff because, but I don't think it'll hurt anything. So what we're doing is saying, hey, data and VoIP, VLAN 11 and 12, which is my data and VoIP traffic, they're tagged, just allow them to come through and we'll push them up to the switch. So we effectively have configured everything. Oops, you'll see on this diagram, except I didn't configure the Cisco switch, but I didn't really configure the Cisco switch because I pre-configured it already. And if you'll see, should see, oops, is that the, oh, okay. I'm just going to pause the video for a second because I'm going to plug in my Cisco switch here. Okay, I logged into the Cisco switch and did a show run. And what I want to show you is that my port 24 is set up as a trunk. And I just plugged this into port 8, the port we just set up to accept the tags on the Fortiswitch. And also that I have on VLAN 11, 10, 15, 11, 5, which you will see in my drawing down here. Okay, so we have 10, 11, 10, 15, 11.5 as the management. So if I send traffic on it, it'll go over VLAN 11. And I also have this 10, 15, 12.5 out there directly connected to the Cisco. And so if we go back, oh, sorry, I want to go back to the firewall. So if we go back to PuTTY, you'll see this. And I just want to demonstrate at this point, right, I should be able to ping my gateway on the Fortinet, on the Fortigate, excuse me, and I can. However, if I try to ping something on a different network like 12.1 on the Fortigate, it's going to fail miserably because right now all I've done is on the Fortilink interface itself, or because if I had multiple switches on the Fortilink, you pull up the Visio, it wouldn't matter. So if I had a bunch of other Fortiswitches up here, as long as I had them all on the Fortilink, I would be able to ping anything on the 10.15.11 network. But I can't ping anything else on it because the Fortigate isn't just a router, it's also a firewall. So even though it has connected routes that connect 11 and 12 to tell it how to get there like any other router would, so you would think it would just work because both interfaces are on the device, it won't. Because it's a firewall, we have to go in and create a policy. So in order to get 11 and 12 to talk, we have to go back to our firewall. And we got to create a policy. And we got to create a policy between VLAN 11 and 12 in both directions. So we're going to go in here and we're going to create new. And for a name, I have a text over here. A name here I'm going to use. And let's see. So from VLAN 11 to VLAN 12, so we have to pick the correct interface. So remember 11 is our VoIP interface, right? And 12 is our data. Because we want to be able to talk from voice to data, at least in this example. Maybe in real life you wouldn't want to do this. But just to demonstrate how this works, that's what we're going to do. And we're just going to open everything up to all, because this isn't really about how do you configure policies. Just to show you how Fortilink works. And if you want to migrate something, this is a great way to do it. A different vendors. Now, one thing you do want to do is turn off NAT. Okay, because you're obviously you don't want any network translation in this case, because we basically want for between VLAN 11 and 12, we basically want the FortiGate to act just like a router. So we're just going to open it up in this case. In your case, between voice and data, you might really want a policy set. But for what we're doing, we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to hit OK. And then we also have to create one to go the other direction. Because now VLAN 11 would be able to send stuff to VLAN 12. But I would not be able to initiate anything from VLAN 12 to VLAN 11. So we need to do it both directions. And so I guess if you wanted a ping to work one way, this is what we did, would probably be okay. But to get everything to work that we want, we're going to also have to have a rule going the other direction. So we're just going to do just the opposite this time. We're going to go from our data, VLAN 12, to our VoIP, VLAN 11. And we're going to source it to any, as soon as it comes up here, or all I should say. And we're going to allow any service. Okay. And we're going to turn NAT off because we don't want NAT. We don't want any other security on it, at least in this example. Now, the nice thing about having a firewall is you could have security. And so now, if I go back to my router, for example, I should be able to ping the 12.1 on the FortiGate. As I opened it up. And if you go back and look at my picture here, okay, I also have a 12.5 plugged into my Cisco router, which I would not have been able to ping before. And I also have 11.4 and a 12.4, although I don't think my ports are set up right for 11.4, but we'll take a look. So if I go back to my Cisco here, okay, not only could I ping 12.1, but I also should be able to ping 12.5. And I'm not sure why one is not working. I might have to, let's see if we can ping any of the 11. .5. Okay, so I can ping. It's myself. Sorry, I'm at 11.4. See if we can ping it. Oh, I don't think I have the port set up right on that. Let's see if I can ping it on the actual Fortiswitch for 12.4. Okay, so I can come back and ping 12.4. So for some reason, which I'll have to take a look here in just a second. So I can, on my Cisco, from the voice network, I can actually ping the, so that's going all the way up through the Fortigate and back down to the Fortiswitch. But for some reason, I'm not able to come back across this trunk. So I'm going to pause the video and take a look at how I have the port set up. Give me just one sec here. Okay, I just went and turned off the Windows Defender firewall on 12.5 and I tested it and it works fine now. The one that wasn't working before still isn't working, 11.4, but I know what the problem with that is. The 11.4 issue is because when we set up our ports, it's plugged into port 2. You go back and look at the diagram. I'm not using an actual phone with a tag here. So we can get to everything except to 15.11.4. Everything pings through the way it's supposed to now. But 11.4 doesn't work. And the reason for that is this isn't actually a phone, so the traffic's not tagged the way I set up. So I have to set it up as untagged just for this. Now, you obviously wouldn't do this in actuality. You can see actually it discovered the name of the computer anyways, even known must saw it through somehow through Mac or something. So we'll go in and change this guy. Oops, I got to remove VoIP from this guy first. From the allowed, because I wanted to now send, instead of looking for tag traffic, I'm going to send it, I'm going to look for untagged traffic and just send it to my VoIP VLAN. Because you can only have one native VLAN, you can't select more than one. So when I selected, it deselects data. And now we should be able to also, if we go back to our switch here, okay, we should be able to ping him as well. So I can get to everything now from the switch. I would have to put up another rule to RDP into one of the other workstations to see that if I could do it there. I have one of them hooked up and I can see it. So it is all working. I can ping across all of them. I guess I could pause the video so I could RDP into one of them, but I will have to set up those firewall rules real quick for the internal, because my main PC here is hooked up on the internal. So let me do that real quick. Okay, I just added a rule so I could RDP into 12.5, and you can see the rule up here. It's the internal to data and data to internal. And I just want to go back to the diagram. This is 12.5. I picked that to RDP into because that shows you have to go all the way around and all the way back. And so I would show it works. So I can RDP into this guy with no problem. And I'll bring him up right here. And you can see from there, we can ping things on other net. Whoops, my bad. Let's see here. I can ping things on the other networks without a problem, whether they're on the 11 or the, here's the switch as well that we couldn't ping earlier. That was because, or the switch couldn't ping him because his firewall was up. And also 12.4, which we had to fix because it was a computer that wasn't being tagged. But you can see everything is functioning as it should. So this is my recommendation if you have to migrate, is just to set it up this way. Like I said, I think a lot of people are getting confused because one thing, they think they have to, for some reason, connect the Cisco switch through the firewall. I would say that's a mistake. It makes it a much more complicated thing to do. And also because you can simply just set up a simple trunk between the two, between the Cisco and the Fortiswitch. And also, I think a lot of people are getting confused when they see, when they're on the Fortigate and they're setting up stuff in the Fortiswitch, they think that the IPs are happening here. It's all happening on the Fortigate. So my recommendation is just think of this as a router on a stick configuration. The Fortiswitch is all layer 2, even if it's a layer 3 Fortiswitch, and all the layer 3 functionality is happening out in the Fortigate. I hope this was a useful video for some people out there. I think it's going to be useful for a couple of my clients. I'm sure people that are big Fortigate users won't have any problem with this, but I've ran into a couple IT people that, you know, networking isn't really their thing. They're more Windows people that do get confused by the way the setup is and the interface. So I'm hoping this explanation was helpful to you if you needed it. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.